United States for 1 second, and then we'll be on the way to something really new, and the clock is ticking.
You know, like a musician in Nigeria, fella Nicola Kukuti would say, so that would be another symposium discussion for the future. Honestly, I don't know why there's no outrage in this country, but you cannot blame it on the people here. You have to blame it on yourselves. The majority of the citizens of this country who are just watching while everything they're standing upon is being eroded, you know, both inside and outside this country. But like I said, if you're ready, we can discuss that at another time. You had a failed revolution on Wall Street. You know, maybe you shouldn't have chosen Wall Street for your revolution. It would have happened.
Well, we're in this together.
Yes, we're in this together. But you know, look at our brothers from Egypt. They've had revolution. I mean, if you check Twitter now, they would have had a fifth one. You know, they've been having it. So what are you waiting for? Or what are we waiting for here? But let's go back to Egypt, the origin of civilization, as we used to call it. So let's have our panelists one more time, just quickly chip in on some of the questions we had. I don't want the Egyptian government to have the last say here today, because one issue that has not been addressed is the mowing down of protesters on the streets of Cairo by the Egyptian military. And is anybody going to get punished for it? Is anybody doing any inquiries about it? How are we going to get justice for those Egyptian citizens who were killed with the weapons used by the Egyptian army, probably provided by the US? Who is going to get justice for that? Because I haven't had that conversation here tonight. The Egyptian government will definitely not talk about it. So how about our panelists? Yes, and Human Rights Watch. You know, what are you doing? Are you also in Egypt, you know, digging up graves, you know, and taking body samples and finding out how people were killed and who killed them? Because the Egyptian government is saying that those people died on their own.
You don't need to do that. You don't need to dig the graves because the bodies are still fresh at the morgues. All you need to do is be part of the Human Rights Watch team in Egypt, go to the demonstrations, look at what happened, go to the morgue and speak to the hospitals that received the bodies. And again, this is not new. This has happened in January 2011. It has happened 6 months after that, and it's happened now. And again, the word is accountability, and the word is the reform of the security forces, and the trick, the secret in Egypt, but in many other countries that are built around the same military structures, is to separate the military totally from civilian life. The military has no business meddling in demonstrations. It has no business meddling with protesters. It has no business meddling in civilian life. Now, one other word that we kind of forgot, but now that you mentioned the role of the army, is to emphasize the need for real political participation of the Egyptians from now on. So the right to peaceful protest is sacrosanct in the international standards of human rights. There is no compromise on that. People are allowed to take to the streets in a peaceful manner, so not have live ammunition or arms or whatever, in a peaceful manner, and demonstrate against whatever politics they don't like. They are not to be shot at, they are not to be killed for exercising that right. Of course, there are certain rules that they should also respect as respectful citizens, responsible citizens themselves. So the right to political participation as enshrined in the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights and the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, both of which international instruments Egypt is party to.
Yeah. Milton, last word, I wanted to ask you, isn't it surprising that, the characters that the African Union actually love democracy, whereas like almost 90% of them are not having good elections. And I'm just afraid that Egypt might be repeated in some of their domains. And is this self-protection of do you think they have come to a point where the tea they've been drinking has woken them up? I mean, I'm surprised at the AU. It's the biggest joke of the century that anybody at the AU expel anybody from doing it. Because there's no government in the AU that can be regarded as democratic.
What?
maybe except South Africa, and if you think of Zuma, I don't know what the country is over there.
Well, I think the continent is changing. We have South Africa, we have Ghana, we have Zambia, we have Senegal, we have Sierra Leone, we have Botswana. We have a process going. Nigeria is taking some steps toward some of it. But to get back to Egypt briefly, I think there's a fear, and it's a real fear, that it's hard to believe that anybody could imagine the Muslim Brotherhood is going to disappear. I mean, if you go and you do your research, Nasser was a very popular leader in Egypt, and even he found difficulty dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood. So if a person who had so much charisma and intelligence and was so popular like Nasser had that kind of challenge, to be honest with you, I don't have much faith in General al-Sisi. He's nowhere close to Nasser. And to suggest that you can give a elected government 48 hours and not call that a coup, it reminds, like, for example, here in the United States, when we had the first black president for the first time, there was a lot of fear in this country. We saw some of the ugliest elements of the racist element, the right-wing element, calling him also maybe a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, even some mainstream media started having discussion about a coup in the United States. So imagine if we had a situation here where the military was not actually securely under civilian control. We can imagine a couple of racist army commanders going up to the White House and saying, Mr. Obama, you gotta go. It's not impossible to think of those scenarios.
That's right.
So we have to be very realistic, and we have to respect people's intelligence. You can go to certain audiences and make some suggestions that, oh, the military just made some recommendations, but not to the kind of audience that comes to this African Roundtable. So I'm sorry if I should have waited for my time to respond, but it took me off guard. I didn't expect it to be that blatant, to be honest with you. And in addition to people showing up in the streets, Madagascar, I think it was a good example, and other parts of the world, when we saw in Chile, for example, a democratically elected government, which was popular to the U.S. The U.S. instigated the army in Chile. There was a lot of street demonstrations, a lot of people showed up in the streets, and ultimately, in Allende's case, it was a very bloody ending. So we know that people can be made to come out to the streets as well. So those are my responses.
Yes.
My take is that there is a revolution going on in Egypt, and it will encounter all sorts of difficulties and challenges. My concern is that I think the leadership of Egypt needs to be very careful and appreciate the fact that there will be many forces which will try and attempt to frustrate that revolution. And I think what has happened now is a clear example of a few mistakes which have been made. And for me, the issue really is that the army really needs to be looked into. The army controls about 20% of Egypt's economy, and is being funded by America. And therefore, what is their role and interest in all this? But secondly, there are issues of the economy which have not been addressed. The gap between the rich and the poor. And I would have thought that there would have been a truth commission in Egypt to actually find out exactly where we are, so that we can actually move better on. What is happening now is really just a patch of the situation, and nothing much has changed. And therefore, a lot still doesn't happen until power is transferred to the people of Egypt, and the economy is in the hands of the people of Egypt, not the elites. What has happened now is someone would say that basically we will just change the faces of Mubarak and replace it with another elite in Egypt. Hence the situation. And then we need to be very careful in safeguarding this revolution. And we have many challenges going